Hi, I'm Nancy Martinez, and I'm the director of the Independent Retail Customer Channel and Marketing here at Limbush Roses. And welcome to LBR Talks, where we provide nuggets on business and leadership for you to help enhance and elevate your business. So I'm pretty excited today about our guest. Our guest is Dave Schulze. Dave is a controller here at Limbush Roses. And it's just really good to get insight from an expert on financials, right? I mean, a lot of us are the creative types, and to help us understand our business and our health of our company based on our financials is really super helpful. One way to do that is to understand the solvency, and Dave will use that term throughout. And I just wanted to take time to define that for you in case that's a word that isn't part of your regular vocabulary. And solvency is one way to measure the health of a business, and it's your ability to pay your debt. So, which is key in running a healthy business, right? So he's going to dive into some really easy to understand and basic concepts on working capital. And so without any other words from me, let's get to him, the expert. Hi and welcome. I'm Nancy Martinez, your host here at LBR Talks. And do you have that team member that you're just so excited that they're a part of your complete team because they have the talents that maybe you lack or you wish you had? Well, our guest today, Dave Schulze, is our controller here at LBR, and he has a lot of gifts and talents that I don't have, and he's willing to share with you. And he does all of our accounting, finance, and really just make sure that we're a healthy company. So, Dave, thank you for what you do here, and welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And speaking of being a healthy company, one aspect we're going to look at today is what to do and how to look at with working capital.
Yes.
Yeah. And maybe we could just start really basic and let our business partners out there know what is working capital.
Sure. Yeah, working capital it's a pretty simple concept. It's looking at your balance sheet and looking at the current assets and current liabilities to determine the solvency of your business.
Okay. All right. And how exactly would you want to look at that, and maybe even like how often?
Sure. Yeah. When I think about our retail partners, I think of people who are creative and innovative and servicing customers and getting product out to them. And not having a ton of time to look at their financials, even though they may want to and have the skills to do that. It's not their primary concern all the time. And so when they tend to look at their financials, they'll tend to look at the income statement.
Sure.
They'll look at the revenues and they'll look at their profits, which is a great thing to do. But I think sometimes we forget about the balance sheet, and looking at working capital and understanding how solvent the business is a really great indicator of how healthy the business is going. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that today.
Great. Okay. And so is there an easy formula or easy methodology that we can speak to and how to do that?
Yeah, and I really like looking at working capital, number one, because it does provide a good indicator, but at the same time it's simple and straightforward to do.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, it's current assets and current liabilities, and part of the current assets are going to be kind of the key working capital components are accounts receivable, your cash, and your inventory on hand.
That's pretty easy. So assets are basically those three things.
Right. On the liability side, even simpler, it's your accounts payable and any current portion of your debt. And when I say current, I want to make sure we're on the same page there. That's anything that's within 1 year. So anything longer than that, let's say you're thinking about assets, your fixed assets like the truck that you drive, that's going to have a longer life. That's not going to be considered in the current portion.
Okay, so really with working capital, you're kind of looking at what we would call short term, basically, and it's a year time frame. What you owe and what your assets are.
Yeah, simple as that.
Okay, and with that, we get the answer, the solve, and that is?
Right, so what you're trying to look at here is your ability to pay or to be solvent with the liabilities that you owe. So in that regard, your assets need to be greater than your liabilities. It's a pretty simple concept.
Makes sense, yes.
Right, so if you divide your assets by your liabilities, you're going to come up with a ratio. And that ratio, the higher that ratio is, the more solvent that you are. And so by looking at that, if that ratio is 1, so they're equal, that's a very thin line. You're going to have just enough assets to cover your liabilities. So you want to get that ratio up a little bit higher than that. And that ratio is called the current ratio. So if you hear that term, you know it's just your current assets divided by your current liabilities.
Okay, and I think you gave us you have an example for us to look at, and maybe now would be a good time to run through that. So I'm a visual person, so we'll be sharing it on the screen here. Let's run through that first one.
Yeah, so this is just a sample company that I put together for the purposes of talking about this, and this particular company has cash, receivables, and inventory that total $35,000. And their current liabilities of accounts payable and current portion of their debt is $25,000. So they're in decent shape. They have $10,000 more in assets, current assets, than they do in current liabilities. If you do that division, their current ratio is going to be 1.4.
Okay.
And 1.4 is decent, but if you're talking to a bank or other creditor, they're probably going to be looking more at a healthy company being around 2.
Okay.
So I'd encourage this particular company to work towards driving up their assets to a higher level than their liabilities by a little bit more, so that they can get into that 2 range.
So if we look at the screen right now and we're seeing it, you're taking, like what you said, the assets divided by your liabilities, and that gives you your current asset ratio. Our current ratio.
The current ratio, that's correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Good.
And Nancy, so if we go to the next slide, what that's showing you is called the quick ratio, and the only difference there is you take out inventory. And the reason I do that, and I kind of like the quick ratio, because taking out inventory, oftentimes inventory is going to turn quickly, which means you can turn it into a receivable or cash relatively quickly.
Especially in the fresh florals that you buy, that's a no-brainer. They're coming in and they have to go out.
That's exactly right. So so those turn over quickly. However, there are some things within inventory that sit there longer. It might be supplies, they're hard goods that you're not going to sell right away. You might keep them on the shelf for a while. So yeah, technically they're a current asset, but in reality they might not be as liquid as other things. So the quick ratio gives you a little bit more of a snapshot into truly how liquid you could be, and it's going to be a lower ratio. And I would encourage that to also be to get near that too. It's always going to be lower than the current, but get it up there close to 2.
And so it maybe is a little more honest approach on how liquid you are. So let's take, for instance, the holidays. So we just, at this recording, just finished Valentine's Day, Mother's Day. Let's say I have Valentine's and Christmas hard good inventories in inventory, right? Paid for, but I'm not really going to be able to turn that till the next holiday. So taking those out of this formula, taking that inventory out, is a little more honest approach on, in the near future, how liquid I am.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And there's science to this, there's the numbers, but there's a little bit of art too. So as you're looking, I would encourage everybody to look at both the current and the quick and really kind of be honest with themselves. Do I have enough in my assets to cover my liabilities?
Okay, yeah.
And then the next thing I wanted to cover was If you don't, if you feel like you're in a position where your current assets are not strong enough, there's some things I think that you can do.
Okay.
And one would be, and a simple answer, and it's not always the answer that people want to hear, is you could infuse more cash into the business personally. That's always an option.
Sure.
Close to that would be ensuring that as your profitability and your business is thriving, that you're leaving cash in the business to help build that up, at least for a time being. Because part of what you need to plan for is not just working capital, being able to cover your payables and your short-term debt, but also there may be things that you want cash for. You might need to improve your storefront or repair your delivery truck or other capital type expenditures that you need, and that's going to dip into that cash as well and lower that ratio. So building that up, I think, is really important to do on a personal level.
Sure, and it's also going to give you a look at, is now the right time for stuff that might be optional. Maybe repairing a truck is not optional, but a facelift to a storefront, it's optional. And by looking at your working capital, that ratio, if it's not quite where you want to be, maybe building it up, like you said, a little bit before making a move like that.
Yeah, deferring
might
some
be
of those decisions, correct.
an option. Okay.
Yeah. And I guess another thing that I'd like to talk a little bit about, I used to work for a CFO who I really looked up to, and I know you like quotes, and something that he often said was, you don't need a bank until you need a bank. And what he meant by that was, when times are good and the truck's running well and your storefront's looking good and the receivables are, people paying their bills on time, you're in good shape. But then when times come, it's a busy time of year or a big repair comes and you're getting low on cash, you might need your bank. And so having that relationship with them so that they know you and they know your business and they're comfortable with you, and having a line of credit with them can be tremendous. And so I would really encourage our partners to make sure that they have a good partnership with their bank, and that they have a line of credit that they can tap into when needed. It's a short-term loan. It's literally a month or two, but it can really come in handy during a busy season when you're buying a lot of inventory and you haven't received a lot of cash back and you need that cash. So it's a great time to have that relationship.
Yeah, and let's just talk about line of credit just for a second. It's a smart business choice. It's not a dirty word, line of credit, which sometimes can be like, I don't want to have to dip into it. But it's there for a purpose. And like you said, it's a short term. So maybe it's like you're ramping up for a holiday. If you need to dip into your line of credit, short term, holiday comes and goes, pay it off. So it's there to really protect you to be able to maintain and continue your business as you ramp up for a busy time or a need, and then you have the ability to pay it off.
Absolutely, and I would encourage our partners to think about that in terms of credit card. We're comfortable with a credit card, and yet our credit card companies are not out for our best interest, but our bank is. They want our repeat business. They want to have that partnership. So it's a much safer type of short-term leverage than what a credit card might provide. So again, I would really encourage that relationship.
Really good. That's good advice. Again, because they want to partner with you. They're good at what they're doing. They know the numbers. They can help you get to the next level in your own business, right?
That's right.
Okay, that's good. Okay, and just to summarize, let's go back and let's hit the key points, just so our viewers here can really glean on what you just said.
Right, yeah. So I want to make sure, because this is something I do every day and sometimes I take it for granted, but monitoring your financials regularly is very important. Monthly at least, when we're talking about working capital, it's a balance sheet, and when you're talking about a balance sheet, it's a snapshot, it's a picture in time.
Sure.
And so when you look at your working capital at the end of the month, it's just what it is at that moment. So I'd encourage you to look at working capital at least every month, and then look for the trends. Is it going down? Is it going up? Where is it going? What does it do during certain times a year, so that you can plan whether it's a credit line or something else at those specific times. So that's number one, is really monitor what you're doing, and then get that ratio up to 2. So as best you can. If it's at 1.8 or whatever, that's fine. But you don't want to have to lose sleep at night because you can't pay your bills and those kind of things. You want enough assets so that you can cover those current liabilities. And then the last thing I'll say is, you don't need a bank until you need a bank. And again, build that relationship, make sure you have that, and you can even do it with a couple of different banks to make sure that you've got yourself covered. And when you need that credit line, it's there for you.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. And like you said, you do this every day. So just for our retail partners out here to start in the habit of doing it regularly, monthly, whatever it is, seeing that snapshot, seeing that trend, and working with their partner, their bank, right, into looking at the health of the company, where is it going, and then lean on them for the advice on what to do next.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and many companies, many of our partners have financial advisors or an accountant that they can turn to for advice and discussions like this. If you have that, fantastic. If you don't, keep it simple. And if you do have questions on what we're talking about today, you can certainly email me, and we can have that discussion.
That's fantastic. So what I heard you say is, if people want more information about what is working capital, what do I need to do, how do I set it up so I can get the numbers, you're willing to answer those questions.
Sure.
You're not willing to be a financial advisor, which is beyond what we could do, but answering those kind of questions so that they can get good information and then take it to their bank or accountant.
That's well said.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's really great. Appreciate that offer. Appreciate your insight and your knowledge on this. This is not the last time we're going to have Dave with us, because I think this kind of information is just really good business nuggets. And appreciate you being here, Dave.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. And thank you for tuning in again. Awesome. Big thanks to Dave for helping us understand another way to understand the health of our businesses, and that is through working capital. And nice that he gave you a goal, something to shoot for, so you can look at it. I also love that he encourages people to create a business partnership with your bank. Really good and strong advice. So as always, I am a quote person, and I couldn't leave you without one, and this is on working capital. Super simple. Daily necessity for your business. Working capital, a daily necessity for your business. So Dave talks about looking at it monthly, but I think in terms of just knowing where you stand and where your number is, and knowing that you should look at it regularly, will help you increase the health of your business. So good luck to you. Go for it. Try some of the things Dave talked about and see what it does for you, having this knowledge. Knowledge is power, and it'll help you understand and elevate your own businesses. Thanks for tuning in again. We'll see you next time.